Talking points. The fate of the House GOP healthcare bill is still uncertain.
We're certainly trying to get to yes, but indeed we've made very reasonable requests, and we're hopeful that those reasonable requests will be listened to. And
the Supreme Court confirmation hearing of Neil Gorsuch continues.
And Senator, I'm not going to be the first judge to come to this table and break that tradition and compromise the integrity of the independent judiciary.
And we'll look into President Trump's budget proposal. How will it affect things local and national? We'll have the answers.
That and more ahead.
This is Talking Points. Good evening, and thank you for tuning in to Talking Points. I'm Mike Riccardi.
And I'm Josh Carney. We begin tonight by discussing the recent Westminster attacks with a Talking Points correspondent abroad.
A day after the London terror attack, the victim death count stands at 3, with over 40 people injured. The deaths include a police officer, schoolteacher, and American citizen. The attacker, 52-year-old Khalid Massoud, was a British-born citizen.
British authorities stated earlier today that Massoud had a criminal record and was previously investigated for violent extremism. ISIS has since claimed responsibility for the attack, although the connection has not been confirmed.
We spoke with Talking Points contributor Paul Dwyer earlier today, live in London, on his reaction to the attack. We asked Paul about the atmosphere in London following yesterday's events.
The atmosphere was actually pretty normal. I was down on Oxford Street, which is the main tourist street with lots of shopping and everything. And there was still a lot of people walking about. The main thing is I noticed a little bit heavier of a police presence, but it wasn't too bad. There's a few officers here and there, especially in the tube stations. In every tube station I was in, there was at least 4 officers, and they were going down, and also some on the streets as well. The atmosphere today was also very normal as I went out. But then when I got down to Westminster, where the attack happened, it was eerily quiet and eerily empty.
Following the attack, British Prime Minister Theresa May said we will never waver in the face of terrorism. May addressed a session of the House of Commons today saying that terrorism will not defeat us and encouraging the public to go about their daily lives. We asked Paul Dwyer how the country is coping with the attack.
Yeah, so downtown, there's a nice monument right by Parliament, right by Big Ben, and people were laying flowers in front of that and wreaths and everything. That was nice. There were I saw a couple of people crying, actually. I don't know if they knew anyone or just generally affected by it. And then tonight, Mayor Sadiq Khan has announced that there will be a vigil in Trafalgar Square.
Our thanks to Paul Dwyer. After the break, we'll be discussing the GOP healthcare plan and why there's no vote today. Stay with us.
This is the story of a boy who didn't talk for a long time. The boy liked things to always be the same. Any changes would scare and upset him. The unknown was an unfriendly place. The boy was very sensitive to lights and sounds. So he built secret hiding places where they couldn't get in. The boy didn't like looking people in the eye. He wasn't trying to be mean, it just made him feel uncomfortable. Sometimes he would flap his arms again and again.
One day, I found out I have something called autism. My family got me help. Slowly, I found my voice and learned all the ways I could live with it better.
Early intervention can make a lifetime of difference. Learn the signs at autismspeaks.org.
They told me a bottle couldn't dream. That I would never become a superhero. but I learned how to fly. Just to come back in a new disguise and be the hero that I've always wanted to be.
The latest development out of Capitol Hill. The House of Representatives postponed its vote on the new GOP healthcare bill. The vote that was scheduled for this evening will not take place today, but there's no word yet on when the vote will happen. Talking Point's national correspondent Galat Malamed is here to discuss. Galat, thanks again for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So there's a lot of intense meetings on the Hill earlier today. They clearly didn't have the votes to pass this. So who are the key players behind this that are really pushing this sort of controversy?
Yeah, so the main meeting today, Donald Trump met with the Republican House Freedom Caucus, who is, of course, definitely more of the right-leaning sections of the Republican Party, and they were trying to compromise. They feel that this is too much of an Obamacare light, simply. It is not conservative enough, and Donald Trump said he's not compromising anymore. They already made a compromise, adding in that, you know, insurance companies didn't have to have the essential benefit mandate, and essentially the Republicans could only afford to lose 21 votes, and the Republican Freedom Caucus is more votes than that.
And when can we expect another vote?
Well, the White House, after the House decided not to vote today, they said that a vote can be expected Friday morning, but nobody in the House is actually saying that or confirming that, so it's really up in the air right now.
Now, with all of that organized chaos, or so it seems, could this be the end or the beginning of the end for the AHCA?
Well, it really depends on how much the Republicans want to lean more right on the spectrum. Because if they bring the bill more, make it more conservative and get the House Freedom Caucus, then this could go through the House, and then of course the Senate's another story, but at least they'll get that first step. The problem is you have moderate Republicans who are saying this is already too conservative and that their constituents benefit a lot from Obamacare, so then you risk losing them. So you have to find a way to tip the balance.
Okay, so let's be hypothetical here. Let's say maybe it does pass. What parts of the country are most affected by this? Any Trump supporters, perhaps?
Yeah, actually, rural counties are really going to be the ones affected the most by this, because in rural counties, it costs more for health insurance because there's less providers. And here, the people who benefit are young people, old people are going to lose out, and rural counties, Alaska's actually going to be the worst off, and they're going to have to pay up to possibly $10,000 more than before, and then Wyoming, Montana, all those states out west are going to have major issues.
Well, Obamacare took over nearly a year to pass, so this is certainly just the beginning.
That's for sure.
After 4 days of intense questioning, Neil Gorsuch's fate is up in the air. Democrats are still angry over Merrick Garland, and this morning, Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer vowed to filibuster Gorsuch's nomination. Talking Point's political correspondent Dan Prager is here to tell us what this court battle could have major effects on both the court and how our government operates. Dan, thanks for being here.
Thanks, guys.
Now, with Democrats putting so much resistance up, what are they going after in terms of Gorsuch's record?
They're really going after his ties to the Heritage Foundation, which is a conservative group who kind of put him on Trump's short list. They're going after one case where he ruled against a worker who was in a freezing car and left the freezing car and got fired for it. They're going after him saying that he's anti-worker and using that as a big example. Really, it's those two things, and they're going after him not really because of his record. A lot of it's because of his ties to Trump. Just because Trump nominated, they're asking whether or not he will be a check on Trump, whether he shares Trump's positions on things like that.
I mean, so it seemed like Neil Gorsuch had a pretty good appearance at the nomination hearing, but Democrats have the numbers to prevent that 60-vote supermajority. However, do you think any will defect that could possibly confirm Neil Gorsuch?
I think it could be said that 1 or 2 may defect, but at this point, they need 8, and there are no 8 people will not defect over. Bob Casey, who would be one of the possible defectors, already said he would vote no on Gorsuch. He's up for re-election in Pennsylvania, which went red. So if he's not going to go, most other people aren't going to go, and they're not going to get the 8. He will be filibustered unless they come to a compromise.
Now, the Republicans need that 50-vote margin, but in the event that they kind of X out that filibuster and you're a Republican and you're on the floor and you're trying to make this happen, what do you think is going through their heads right now?
All right, so I'll explain a little there. Republicans have the option, if this gets filibustered, to eliminate the filibuster entirely. Senator Mitch McConnell said that he does not want to do this. He said that back in January. But that is an option and something that Trump has advocated for. If they did this, it could come back to really bite them. Democrats did this earlier years ago, and it's hurt them with nominations now. People like Betsy DeVos and Ben Carson slid easily through when, if there was a filibuster, it wouldn't have happened. It's a short-term gain, but kind of a long-term pain. But they're weighing the consequences of that right now.
Now, is that long-term pain worth it, though?
Definitely. That's the question.
And like you said, Mitch McConnell is reluctant to invoke the nuclear option. Is there any chance Democrats might strike a deal with this nomination?
Absolutely. They're actually talking among themselves right now to possibly make a deal that would basically say, okay, we will let Gorsuch through, we will let you have this win, but in the future, you're not allowed to get rid of the filibuster. We're able to filibuster your nominees later. We'll give you this if you can hold off on eliminating the filibuster for the next 4 years, because it could hurt us.
Thank you for being here. Appreciate it.
Coming up, we'll be talking about the economy's success under President Trump. Don't go away.
Looking for these? You drive buzzed. It could be one very expensive ride.
First, you gotta make bail. Then pay me to get your car back.
Your insurance premiums will go through the roof.
And my legal fees just keep adding up. All told, it could end up costing you $10,000.
Buzzed, busted, and broke. Because buzz driving is drunk driving.
Look at you. You're at the top of your game. You're unstoppable. Nothing can throw you off track. Wait, is that your car? Uh-oh. Yeah, I saw that coming. That will throw you off track. You're looking at around 10 grand in fines, legal fees, and increased insurance rates. Let's try this again. Smart move. Because buzz driving is drunk driving.
Visit aarp.org/caregiving for information on how to provide even better care for the person who wants to care of you.
The EPA is bracing for major cuts in funding following Trump's budget proposal. If the proposal passes and cuts take effect, many states will have to scramble for ways to make up the money. Under President Obama, the government gave $2 billion to states surrounding the Great Lakes for cleanup efforts. New York is one of them. Talking Points contributor Connor White is here to talk about it. Connor, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Now, if these cuts actually do go through and happen, what does this ultimately mean for this region?
What it means is efforts could stop in terms of cleanup for the Great Lakes, and it's a project that's done a lot of important work. They've cleaned up 300 miles of polluted shoreline in the time that it's been in effect under Obama. 40 million people rely on the Great Lakes for drinking water, and this isn't pocket change. The government contributes $2.2 billion, as you said, to 8 different states under this project. New York is included, and it's going to be up to the states to try to make up that cash if it all goes away.
So outside of the Great Lakes, Syracuse has Onondaga Lake, which is one of the dirtiest lakes in the country, and then we have the pristine Finger Lakes to the southeast. How exactly will these EPA cuts affect the rest of central New York?
Well, in the words of New York General Attorney Eric Schneiderman, it could have devastating effects. He's very worried about it. A lot of environmental activists all over the state are incredibly worried. There are 87 Superfund sites all over the state, and what they're essentially flagged by the EPA to be super toxic, super polluted places that need attention. They all receive funding from the federal government. Onondaga Lake is one of them. They receive $16.5 million from the EPA. And Onondaga is a region, and New York is a state. You know, their budget decision is coming up. And environmental things are something that they're really going to have a hard time making up money on.
Right, and understanding those numbers and realizing how devastating these cuts could be, why do you think the president is still going through with these actions?
Well, he's making good on his promises to deregulate business, right? So, you know, throughout his campaign, he made promises to take government out of business, to deregulate things. And the EPA is something that he sees as unnecessary and overreaching by government standards. he put Scott Pruitt at the head. He's someone that doesn't believe in the EPA, and there's word about them scrapping it by 2018.
Seems like the environment certainly weighs in the balance. Connor, thank you for your insight.
Thank you.
Of the many campaign promises from President Trump, prime among them was a stronger economy. And aside from this week's news of the stock market hit, following the president's inauguration, the market has been surging, which some are attributing to President Trump. Talking Points contributor Sabrina Majori is here to discuss. Sabrina, thanks for joining us yet again.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, so right after the election, we saw the Dow and S&P skyrocket. Is this a sign of a healthy economy?
So yeah, right after Trump was elected, they both reached record highs. But what's most significant is that immediately after the inauguration, the Dow reached the 20,000, crossed the 20,000 point threshold, which was huge. But it's not necessarily a sign of a healthy economy. What we do know right now is that Wall Street is betting on Trump following through with his campaign promises, rolling back on taxes, cutting regulations, and investing in the economy. So honestly, right now we don't know how the economy is going to be impacted because we also don't know how the labor force is going to be affected. It's just what companies are expecting.
Now that President Trump has only been in office for 63 days, so how much of this actual success can we attribute to him?
A lot of this is a continuation of success that we saw under President Obama. After the stock market crashed in 2009, it's actually been increasing. So now the stock market has, the Dow has risen to 210% since it reached its low point, and that's really huge. So it's just a continuation of the success so far.
So I don't know if anyone else is calling this. I'm going to call it the Trump bump. So post-election for other presidents, have we seen anything similar?
Yeah, it's normal for the stocks to fluctuate after an election. What we do know and what is typically seen is that there's a 0.9% decrease. And what happened after Trump is that there was a 1.4% increase. So things are looking good for Trump.
So can we expect this so-called Trump bump to continue?
Analysts are saying right now that this bump is coming to a halt. The Dow has, for the past 5 days, closed on a low. And so, it's something that we're going to have to keep looking at and see what happens in the future.
So, during the President Obama administration, there was 75 straight months of job growth. Can we expect, obviously we can't look that far ahead for President Trump, but can we expect this sort of surge of job growth to continue? 200,000 plus jobs in the month of February.
We can expect some job growth, but again, we just have to see. The first February labor report came out, and there was a good amount of job growth, but again, it could just be a continuation of economic recovery that we saw under President Obama, so we just have to wait and see.
Well, certainly a strong start. Sabrina, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
At home, European countries are seeing rallies advocating for the expansion of the Turkish president's power. In response, officials from the Netherlands and other European countries are calling for rally bans. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan responded, calling Dutch officials Nazis and fascists. Talking Points international correspondent Elijah Shama is here to talk about the so-called war of words breaking out between the two nations.
Thanks for having me.
Elijah, thank you for being here. So where are we in terms of this war of words?
Right now, we have the Turkish president really almost threatening the safety of Europeans living in the EU. He recently said that if you hit me, I'll hit you back, saying that he will make the streets of Europe not safe to walk in. So we're seeing very, very strong rhetoric. This isn't just light words. These are words that could have potential impact on people's lives.
Right.
Is there any reason for European leaders to sort of worry about President Erdogan's actions?
It's interesting because on the face value, you'd say, no, this is Turkey. This is a country that's trying to get into the EU. There's really no reason to be worried. But Turkey has 1.2 million refugees in it currently. So when you think about that and President Erdogan's threat that he will send 15,000 refugees a week, to put that in perspective, the Netherlands took 40,000. That's almost half the number of refugees Netherlands took in total in a week.
That could pose major threats to public safety abroad.
Exactly.
As well.
This would put huge strain on public resources. So it's not so much a military threat, but this idea that they put too much strain on European economies is a real threat and is serious.
Now, considering though this war of words is mostly political, and now that the Netherlands' deadline for the election has passed, do you think we're going to see a de-escalation in this feud?
I think it's interesting because I think on the Dutch side, we will see a de-escalation. We will see them step back. The center-right won that election, so they don't necessarily need to kind of pander and look strong in the face of a threat from another country. But I think in Turkey we're going to see them continue to push this, because with this constitutional referendum that they're pushing, Erdogan wants to look like a strongman, and nothing looks more like a strongman than standing up to Europe. His base likes that, and a lot of people in Turkey like that. They like seeing that their country isn't getting pushed around by the European Union. So I think on the Netherlands side, yes. On the Turkish side, maybe not so much.
And if they do pass the constitutional referendum, what exactly does President Erdogan have to gain?
President Erdogan really has everything to gain from this constitutional referendum. If he wins this referendum, he will have the power to call parliament and suspend parliament. He will have the power to appoint all the members of the judiciary. Basically, he'll run the country. He will be the sole person in power in Turkey, which is a huge change from kind of the more secular constitutional democracy that Turkey has traditionally been. Right. So really, this would be a huge tonal shift and just complete revolution in Turkish politics.
Right. Not only is we seeing a shift domestically in terms of politics, but internationally as well, because they do have a bid for a referendum to join the EU, and on top of that, they're also heavily Netherlands are heavily invested in that country as well. So, what do you think this conflict does to put both their economic goals as well as this EU referendum in jeopardy?
Short term, I don't think there's anything that can really hurt either country economically, but if this escalation continues, the Dutch are the single highest direct investment in Turkey. 16% of investment in Turkey is Dutch investment. So if there were to be sanctions placed, if this war turns into a trade war, Turkey is going to have problems. That's almost 20% of their foreign investment gone. That's not something that I really think any country would be able to handle with.
Absolutely right. Elijah, that's certainly an issue that we're going to be taking a strong look at. Thank you for being here. When we get back, we will be taking a look at some stories that fell through the cracks. Stay with us.
Well, Thomas, you've got prediabetes. But with more exercise and a change in diet, it can be reversed.
I've tried exercising. It just makes me hungry for bacon.
I love bacon, too. And who really likes to exercise?
Not me.
Me neither.
Nobody. So we're good?
What? Oh, you still have prediabetes. Big time.
Here's your check. Oh, you got it.
You know, since I got rid of my car, I really enjoy walking.
Okay. God, no.
Getting pulled over for buzz driving could cost you around $10,000 in fines, legal fees, and increased insurance rates.
Oh, you're home early. You live with your mom?
That'll set your game back a few years. Buzzed, busted, and broke. Because buzz driving is drunk driving.
Come on, it's not that hard.
My big man fingers are having a problem with these little tiny buttons.
Whoa, watch it there. Your blood pressure's gonna go through the roof.
Tell me about it. I'm trying to learn how to get it down. Instead, it keeps going up.
High blood pressure can increase the risk for heart attack or stroke. Learn how to keep yours at a healthy range.
Ever hear a voice command? Just say text barbershop to 97779.
That's not what I said.
Just give me that. Now my blood pressure's up.
Here at Talking Points, we value in-depth coverage of the world's most pressing issues.
But some stories inevitably don't capture mainstream attention.
This week, we have 3 important stories you may have missed. Refugees fearing mistreatment under the Trump administration are seeking asylum outside the U.S. Canadian officials are reporting that at least 2,500 refugees crossed the border from the U.S. during the months of January and February.
Refugees entering Canada have a vastly different experience than those entering the U.S. People are generally only detained for a day or two, and they're encouraged to begin settling even while their refugee applications are being processed.
Google is giving advertisers more control over where their ads appear within the digital advertising network. This announcement follows days of reports that various brands' ads were showing up with videos that don't align with their brand's values.
Multiple companies, as well as the British government, suspended ad campaigns with Google in response to their ads being shown with videos promoting terrorism and white supremacy. Google plans on hiring more people and tweaking its own algorithm to ensure that they can quickly and effectively review questionable content for advertising.
Former Russian lawmaker and vocal Putin critic Denis Vorenikov was gunned down outside a hotel in Kiev today. Ukrainian President Petro Poroshenko called the killing an act of Russian state terrorism.
A spokesperson for Vladimir Putin called any connection with Russia absurd and accused the Ukrainians of not providing Voronenko with adequate security. Voronenko was preparing to give evidence in case against the former Ukrainian president who fled to Russia in 2014.
When we come back, Josh and I will be taking a look ahead at the week ahead.
Here we go. We're gonna go out there in the rain. You're gonna get wet. All right, here we go. Oh, no. Oh, look at the rain. Okay, quick. Oh, yeah, yes. So much fun. Mwah. Yeah, Dad. We're getting so wet.
Got a quarter?
In the weeks ahead, two major things are catching our eye. First is Trump's budget proposal.
One story I'll be following in the weeks to come is the impact President Trump's first proposed budget will have on his political clout and the economy. Trump's budget prioritizes critical investments such as the Department of Defense, Veterans Affairs, and Social Security, but at the great expense to major government entities and programs. On the other hand, the America First budget blueprint outlines deep cuts to the Environmental Protection Agency, Education Department, NASA, as well as funds for block grants that support major social programs. The Trump administration's suggested reorganization of funding identifies a lot of negative consequences, but the negligible 0.2% of the federal budget devoted to the EPA does not resemble a strong cut, raising questions as to whether or not it's a politically motivated attack on regulatory power. It's possible that without adequate funding for certain social safety nets, let alone valuable regulatory departments, many facets of the economy and segments of the population could suffer.
I'm taking a look ahead to this upcoming May, when NATO leaders will meet in Brussels. The White House announced yesterday that President Trump will be attending the meeting. In the past, President Trump has been critical of NATO. Just last week, during his joint press conference with German Chancellor Angela Merkel, Mr. Trump stated that many NATO allies owe vast sums of money and they must pay what they owe, calling it unfair to the United States. However, that is not how NATO works. Even though NATO members pledge to spend 2% of GDP on defense, they do not accumulate debt if they fail to reach the full amount. The White House stated that the president will reaffirm our commitment to NATO and discuss shared responsibility in the fight against terrorism. I'll be watching to see if President Trump upholds this positive tone with our allies or takes a step back and continues to bash the organization. That's all we have for tonight.
In the meantime, check out CitrusTV.com for anything Citrus TV Talking Points. You'll find episodes, segments, blog posts on our personal page.
Thanks for joining us and be sure to tune in next week. Till then, this is Talking Points.